Yo, what's up, guys? Leafs lose tonight to the New York Islanders 3-1, guys. In a pretty boring game tonight, to say the least. Not a great game tonight, guys. Very low event hockey game. Islanders do a really good job on their power play, taking advantage of the Leafs tonight. Leafs penalty kill being one of the only few bright spots this season, one of the only few positive things this year. Giving up 2 power play goals to the New York Islanders, of course. Obviously not the best for the Maple Leafs, but of course, right now, we as fans want the priority of getting a top 5 pick. This will obviously benefit the Toronto Maple Leafs losing this game tonight. Obviously, we know the Islanders are competing for a playoff spot. They're like top 3 in the Metro there, guys. So, these were 2 valuable points. And yet, guys like Callum Ritchie and Matthew Schaefer making their homecoming tonight. 2 Ontario boys. Schaefer getting an assist tonight, Ricci getting a goal there. So, the Islanders, well-deserved winners tonight. Deserved winners, of course. The Maple Leafs didn't really do much tonight, guys. The Leafs did not really push the Islanders much. Didn't really get a lot of ozone time. Sure, they had some shots on net, but nothing grade A, nothing amazing. They had a couple chances here and there, but the Islanders took advantage more on the Leafs power plays more than the Leafs. It was a bit of a messy game tonight, to say the least, guys. I thought Joe Wall played well again tonight. It wasn't his fault on any of the goals tonight, to say the least. Especially on the first 2 goals. Like, they're honestly pathetic goals, to say the least, defensively by the Leafs. But that's nothing new regarding the Maple Leafs this year. On the first power play, that Nick Robinson gets a penalty for. Braden Shen, newly acquired from the St. Louis Blues, gets a nice goal. He's wide open there because Jake McCabe is too deep in front of the net there. Braden Shen has a little bit of space in front. He's able to beat Joe Wall because he's wide open there to make it 1-0 for the Islanders. And then we saw the other penalty that Brandon Carlo got for a high stick, and Ricci's in front of the net there, all by himself. The guy could have a bloody sandwich there if he wanted to, for God's sakes. Getting a shot in front of the net there, beating Joe Wall to make it 2-0 for the Islanders. I'm thinking to myself, okay, at least the Leafs are, they're not getting hammered, but they weren't playing great either. Joe Wall was basically bailing them out again, making some really good saves in this game, keeping the Leafs into the game at least a little bit, it wasn't getting out of hand. The Islanders did have some more chances, though, to make it 3-4-0, but Joe Wall came up big for them. Horvat had hit a post early on in the second period, but we saw Steven Lorentz cut it down, with a nice forecheck there by the Leafs with Joshua and Bo Gruel and Lorentz there. Of course, Gruel does the good job there to get the puck off there and knock the puck off, and we saw Lorentz get the goal there on the one time there. Gruel's got 4 points in 4 games, so that's great to see Bo Gruel continue to contribute. Lorentz gets his first goal since like December 23rd, guys, so it's been a long time since he's gotten a goal, so good for the confidence for Steven Lorentz. Bo Gruel continues to show that he's capable of playing at the NHL level, but then as we saw, the Toronto Maple Leafs, as they do, turning the puck on their own end, and unfortunately, William Nylander is the main culprit on this one here for the 3rd goal. It is majority his fault why this goal went in, and this is a pure example of why there are certain Leaf fans that have frustrations with William Nylander and how he operates as a player. Listen, I love what William Nylander brings offensively. I love, how his attitude is, with not giving a crap about what media says about him, just goes out and plays hockey. But there are times where William Nylander does frustrate me. It's very evident, to say the least. And sure, the season's over and everything, but plays like what he did here on the 3rd goal can drive me up a wall. He's making $11.5 million a year. Probably drove Craig Berube nuts as well, even though Craig Berube probably won't be here next year, as the coaches understand, but why seeing plays like that is the reason why he'll probably lose his job at the end of the year. But William Nylander, too nonchalant on the play there, gets the puck, after there's a bit of a scramble in front and Joe Wall isn't able to freeze the puck. Willie's got the puck, is able to get it out, tries to make a pass instead of knocking the puck out from the boards. Turns the puck over. D'Angelo gets the puck from the point, and he finds Heineman there on the side there and beats Joe Wall 5-0 there, guys, to make it 3-0 for the Islanders. And I just said to myself, that is something there. William Nylander being a veteran on the team, being a leader of this team, being on the Leafs for a very long time, and those are one of the situations where I point to and say, that's where Leafs management, upper management and the culture, they have to say to themselves, that can't be allowed. That shit's got to change, but this is William Nylander in a nutshell. He has done this before in the past, and obviously this is what you get with the guy. You're going to get an incredible, tremendous offensive upside, and then you're going to get some backbreaking defensive plays from the guy, and that's the frustrating thing regarding Willie, and I understand if some people do want to get rid of the guy, but at the same time, I think he's a player that if you put the right pieces around him, he could thrive, and you won't ask him to do the certain things that other fans ask of him for. Honestly, I am upset that he did not go after, Gudas there after Matthews didn't defend him more than I expected him to. Of course, being teammates with Austin for over 8 years. We expected it more from William Nylander, but this is who he is, and it is frustrating, and I understand why people want to go at him for that play there and previous plays in the past. I understand that, but I still think Willie's a great player, can help this Maple Leafs team maybe turn it around next year. Of course, guys, that's just depending on how the management upstairs change this team moving forward, in terms of certain players leaving, and bringing in the right character guys and stuff like that to surround Nylander and Matthews, of course. Now, I'm just obviously shooting hypotheticals here, of course, but I understand why guys and fans are frustrated with that play there, guys. So, very understandable. It's a back-breaking play there, really killed the game there for the Leafs. They were not coming back in this hockey game after going down 3-1. They had some chances. Tavares had a chance in front of the net at one point in the game. Nylander made a great pass to him in the first period there. He could have scored a goal there. Quillen had a great opportunity in the third period, wide open net there. He couldn't score. There were a couple other chances. Carlo got some shots from the point. The Leafs generated some other chances, but nothing really threatening Sorokin. The Islanders are a solid team, guys. They're top 5 in wins on the road. Pretty sure after tonight, they have 21 wins on the road. They get great goaltending this year, averaging a .913 save percentage from their goaltenders this year. So, the Islanders are a solid young team, solid role team, get solid goaltending. You got great players like Barzal who had 3 assists tonight. Schaefer, who had an assist tonight, solid young player, probably going to win Rookie of the Year, future superstar, of course, and Matthew Schaefer. So the Islanders were more than deserving of winning this game tonight, guys. The Leafs just made it very boring, other than seeing Morgan Riley get involved in a scrum there with McLean there after knocking Joel Wall down, and listen, it's nice to see Morgan Riley say, hey, don't touch our goalie, yada, yada, yada. I'm going to fight you because you touched somebody. The response is great after what happened to Matthews, of course, with Gudas. But not only is it a week too late, it's probably 8 years too late. This is what we've been wanting to see from not only Riley, but the rest of the Leafs team. The minute you touch a teammate, the minute anybody goes down, even a touch, you're getting into a scrum or a fight. We've been wanting this for years. It really sickens me that it took Matthews to go down. It took this team to not make the playoffs this year. It took Berube ripping him a new one in the dressing room of the game against Anaheim. And obviously it's only going to happen for another month, and then we're off for 4 months, and then September rolls around, and it might be back to normal again. Who knows? But I'm telling you right now, I like seeing that response, but also it is a bit frustrating as a Leaf fan to say, where the hell has that been the last 8 years, and especially last week defending your captain, So I like that Riley defended Joe Wall there. All the players are saying, oh, it's great to see our teammates sticking up for each other, blah, 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 blah. But you got all these other former pros, current players as well, saying that there needed to be a different response, and there absolutely needed to be. And obviously the spotlight's on this Maple Leafs team right now, because anytime somebody gets hit in another game, or somebody doesn't defend a teammate, they're throwing a shot at the Maple Leafs, saying, that's like the Toronto Maple Leafs, or anything regarding fighting. Somebody's going to throw a shot at the Maple Leafs. We've seen it the last week or so. I've seen it many times, people throwing a shot at the Leafs saying, they're like the Maple Leafs, or just like it's only the Maple Leafs who do these type of things. And that pisses me off, obviously, but it's justified. The Leafs have asked for this type of criticism towards them. They deserve it because they haven't done it for years. They have not been the type of team to stand up for each other and fight, and get involved in scrums after whistles and stuff when they've had to. They've never done it. That's the type of team I want to see. I'm sure a bunch of Leaf fans want to see, but unfortunately, we have not seen that in the past. Now we're finally seeing it when the season's a wash, in game 60 bloody 9. Your captain's gone for the year. The goaltenders are the only guys doing anything really good right now. They're making saves, and preventing these guys from getting embarrassed right now. So, other than that, though, guys, it's been very frustrating, of course, seeing the response that these guys have had since Matthews has gone down. Tonight's performance was good for Tank Nation, of course. Another loss. Winnipeg and Nashville playing tonight. So one of those two teams is going to get closer to the standings. Of course, Florida's playing Vancouver tonight, so hopefully Florida can win to get ahead of us again, guys. Stay ahead of us there. So we got to continue to keep an eye on the scoreboards to hopefully see if the Leafs can continue to drop down. That win against Minnesota just annoys me even more. That was an unnecessary win. even though they showed character in that game, that game, they did not need to win that hockey game there, guys. That would have been great if they could have lost that game. They'd be right there, close to the bottom there, getting even closer to the bottom 5 there. But unfortunately, they didn't do themselves any favors winning against Minnesota. The Islanders got the business done tonight, And listen, man, this Schaefer kid, speaking of him again, what a talent he is. The way this kid moves the puck, the way he skates, the way he transitions from defense to offense, this kid here is going to be something special. At 18 bloody years old, he could have even been on the Olympic team, for God's sakes. That's how good this kid is. The New York Islanders, they got themselves a gem with this one here, man. What a talent this kid is here, And then you got guys like Richie, of course. You got Barzal, of course. So you got some really good, solid players. Bo Horvat as well. Good leaders like Horvat and Anders Lee. So the Islanders are going in the right direction. Patrick Waugh, obviously one of the greatest goaltenders to ever play the game. He's really turned it around as a coach, done a great job with the Islanders organization the last couple of years. And they're primed to make the playoffs. They're showing what the Leafs are right now. They can execute on the power play, are able to make it a boring game, play tight defensively. They're a really good, nice young team, the New York Islanders, and they're trending in the right direction. Whereas the Maple Leafs, they got some really serious decisions to make in this offseason, of course. And then even seeing that jackass George Peros talking about his decision today. The guy is such a bloody tool. He's an idiot. I don't even want to hear him anymore talk. Just go sit in your office, you jackass, and then get ready to hammer the Leafs again if they get involved in something like this again. I can't stand that dummy, to be honest with you guys. But we got, obviously, Anaheim coming up in a week or so, guys. So that's going to be interesting to say the least, guys. As long as the Leafs continue to play with a little bit of at least, a little bit of energy, not trying to get hammered every game. But if you lose the way you lose tonight, I'm okay with it. If you lose the way you lost against Buffalo on Saturday, that's fine as well. As long as you're not getting thoroughly embarrassed and you're getting some productive minutes for younger guys like Quillen and Gruel and Cowan, like I've been saying in past videos, of course, guys. And then obviously you want your veterans to obviously show some leadership. Speaking of leaders, John Tavares, he's starting to look a little bit slow, to say the least. Obviously he's been very quiet. Obviously had a goal like a week and a half ago, but obviously he hasn't been great, to say the least, guys. No one's been great, but John is, you could see he's starting to slow down a little bit. His game looks a little bit slow. I'm not trying to pick on him right now. I'm just trying to point it out. He had a great opportunity in front of the net there. He missed it there, but just one little point there regarding him. There's other guys that are obviously not playing great, to say at least. Nyes has been invisible. Obviously Domi's been invisible, of course. There have been a lot of guys that are not producing right now. Like I've been saying in past videos, they're just going through the motions. Now there's about 12 or 13 games. I think there's 13 games left, guys. So just hope to God this season can end sooner rather than later. And hope to God the Leafs can continue to lose the rest of the way, not win too many more games coming up, guys. You got some playoff opponents coming up. You got the Bruins coming up soon as well. So those are teams competing for playoff spots, guys. And we obviously know where the Leafs stand in the standings, guys. So let's see how they do next game, guys. Love your thoughts and opinions on this game tonight. Not the best of games. Pretty boring, to say the least. One of these games where you just want the 2 hours to go by, talk about the game, and then obviously go on about your night, because these games here are just grinding games you just have to grind through right now. They're not fun to watch, to say the least, guys. But love to your guys' thoughts and opinions on this game tonight, guys. So like this video, subscribe if you guys want to see more content. Go Leafs, go as always, guys. See you guys on the next episode of Leafs Unfiltered. Ciao, guys.